Library for the People. That's the name of a new limited podcast series celebrating the Chicago Public Library's 150th birthday. The first episode takes us back to the 1800s and shows us the unexpected connection between the Great Chicago Fire and the birth of the Chicago Public Library. How interesting. Here to tell us more is the host of Library of the People, Alison Cuddy, and Chicago Library Commissioner Chris Brown. Commissioner and Ms. Cuddy, thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
Commissioner, in these 150 years, how has the library, the public library, evolved and transformed the ways in which it serves communities? Of course it has changed, as everything has changed, especially in the past 10, 20 years. How has it transformed along with the rest of us?
Yeah, we've, as you mentioned, the city has transformed and we've really gone along with it. When you look back at the origin story of the Chicago Public Library, we were really this beacon of hope coming out of the Great Chicago Fire of 1873. And we were housed first in a water tank that survived that fire. So again, that image of hope coming out of that catastrophe, but really bringing these incredible services to the city. And so you can see these photos of these horse-drawn services we would bring out to reading rooms in the Chicago Park field houses. It's really this incredible story of what we've developed the library to today, which is in all 77 neighborhoods through 81 library locations with industry-leading architecture and just really driving learning and access in our city.
Yeah, they still are incubators for learning and growing young and old minds alike. Could you both share with me one thing particularly that stood out while creating this podcast series you're working on?
I think what struck me, building off what the commissioner was just talking about, is how much Chicago is a city of libraries, and that really the story of the library is the story of Chicago. Whether you're interested in historic events like the Great Chicago Fire, or the Great Migration, or architecture, or neighborhoods and their development, or issues around immigration, civic leadership, all of that can be found in the library. So it's just such a great lens on Chicago and how it works past and present.
Commissioner, your most profound discovery in the evolution of this series?
Yeah, definitely, as we're in this moment where we're seeing these increased book bans across the country, I think Chicago can take a lot of pride in that we were the first city in the country to release an intellectual freedom statement all the way back in 1936, really around that McCarthyism period. And so just seeing how we've been at the forefront of First Amendment rights and preserving those opportunities to include all of our diverse stories, I think that's a real moment of pride that we can take, just celebrate as a city.
Truly is. Episode 2, Library as the Soul of the Community, caught our eye. Alison, can you talk to us about the Hall Library branch in the Grand Boulevard neighborhood? It's remarkable. Names like Gwendolyn Brooks, Langston Hughes actually went there for research.
Yes, yeah, it's an incredible story. We have amazing branch libraries in this city, and the George C. Hall branch really stands out. It was built in 1932, and it was the first library designed specifically for an African-American community, and especially for people coming to Chicago through the Great Migration. And so George C. Hall, who headed up Provident Hospital, a great philanthropist, was the head of the Urban League, and Julius Rosenwald, who you may know from Sears, had the resources and the vision to support the building of this library. And then the library appointed Vivian G. Harsh to be the director of the library. She was the first African-American woman to head up a branch in the Chicago Public Library system. And she set about building an incredible collection for that community that would talk about their story, their history, the important moments in their lives, individually and collectively. And that collection became, as you said, Brad, a mecca for the Black arts movement in Chicago, sort of our version of the Harlem Renaissance. And so those writers, Gwendolyn Brooks, Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston came there, and Vivian G. Harsh and the other librarians, all African-American women, did all kinds of programming and community outreach to really get people engaged with the library and let them know that this was a resource for them, this was a place for them, and it was an incredible success. And their work continues. I mean, that collection is now at the Carter G. Woodson Regional Library on the south side of Chicago. And it's the largest collection of African-American history and literature in the Midwest, and all kinds of people make use of it. So it's exciting to discover the legacy and see it living on today.
Yeah, you guys are speaking my language. I am a library geek, and that's not a pejorative. I was an English and history major before I failed into journalism, so I love my library time. Commissioner, as you were saying, Chicago Public Library was the first public library in the country to have an intellectual freedom policy which protected books on all sides of controversial topics. Fast forward to now, when books are under attack, knowledge is under attack, truth is under attack. Commissioner, how is CPL keeping this policy and protecting and ensuring that this knowledge lives to be learned?
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely committed as ever to our diverse voices, to inclusion. We were the first library to declare ourselves a book sanctuary, really establishing all of our 81 locations as safe spaces for our collective voices. And what that means is really committing to including frequently challenged books, bringing in authors who are frequently sought to be banned or removed from libraries, and working with others throughout the country to promote the importance of this issue. That campaign, the Book Sanctuary campaign, you can visit it online at booksanctuary.org. We've been joined by over 2,000 individual citizens and libraries from across the country, including libraries in Florida and our neighbors up in Canada. So we're continuing to write our history today and carry those important values to the present.
Alison, final tip to you. The last episode drops next week. Can you give us a preview?
Absolutely. So as much as we're celebrating 150 years of the Chicago Public Library, the podcast is really, as the commissioner has been saying, what is happening now in libraries. And so we couldn't wrap this up without asking what's happening next. Mm-hmm. And so we have gathered some really interesting people, some of whom may be charged with that question, to think about the future of the library, including our new mayor, Brandon Johnson, including Bob Wislow, who heads up the board of the Chicago Library Foundation, and the fabulous Dr. Eve L. Ewing, who's a scholar and an Afrofuturist, to help us sort of peer into the future of our beloved library.
I love it. Looking forward, looking back. It's really remarkable. I've listened to them all and would suggest anyone, it's a good listen. Chicago Library Commissioner Chris Brown and Alison Cuddy, host of the Library for the People podcast. Thank you so much for your work. Library for the People is free and available wherever you stream your podcasts. Thank you for your work, and let's have you on the stream again sometime soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.